Boys, you're gonna love this. We have some more hot, juicy news about the glorious destruction of Ashes of Creation and how absolutely incompetent all the people working there were, especially a good old Game Master Steven. Oh, yes. Because if you thought it's strange that in 10 years Ashes of Creation hasn't even finished 5% of the game, well, needless to say, that's because of a reason. And that reason is because every single person working there was absolutely clueless what they are even supposed to do on a regular basis. And that's absolutely hilarious.
It was immensely successful, garnering over $3.2 million from almost 20,000 backers supporting this project. And it was all being spearheaded by this individual, creative director, Stephen Sheriff, who had grand visions of an
Young doesn't even know how to pronounce his surname. Stephen Sheriff. No, it's Stephen Sharif.
MMO that'd be incredibly reactive to players' actions, and the world would be shaped based on how players collectively behaved in the world. It was an incredibly ambitious project whose ideas drew a lot of attention, but then people started looking into some of the people involved, including Stephen Sheriff, and that's when things started to become a little suspect. It turned out Stephen Sheriff had a background in multi-level marketing, which is a controversial form of business that is like pyramid scheme-esque. Then there's the fact that Stephen Sheriff had no real experience developing games, and the team he did assemble, while they had some experience, it wasn't the level of experience you'd expect to build an MMO of this ambition. There's the controversial referral program that they tried to leverage, where essentially creators who promoted this Kickstarter would get money for a game that doesn't really even exist yet, which reminded people of multi-level marketing enough that it drew some...
Yeah. Now, the truth is that no one actually was suspicious of Steven. No one brought up the multi-level marketing stuff. In all of the time that Ashes of Creation was a thing and there existed detractors, I actually never heard about any of the multi-level marketing shit. That turns out Steven got rich through that. I knew that he was a self-proclaimed a billionaire, but the fact that he got rich through that, I had no idea. I just thought he's a nepo baby. Well, turns out he wasn't that far from a nepo baby to a degree, considering all of his family also does that type of scams.
Suspicion, and there were also suspicions surrounding the promise that if no game releases from this Kickstarter campaign, then Stephen Sheriff himself would refund all Kickstarter backers. Now, over the course of years, people would see progress on Ashes of Creation, however slow it was. 4 years after the Kickstarter campaign, they launched a first playable alpha that ultimately was met with mixed reception because a lot of systems were still...
The people making videos about the Ashes of Creation and defending the slow progress, that was always one of the biggest things I absolutely detested about this game. Because there were so many people who are like, okay, a year has passed and they added 2 new animations. Wow, that's so good. That's such great progress. And you would have these people who typically usually had the referral code defending all the slop that Ashes of Creation did. Or, more precisely, none of the slop that they did, because Ashes of Creation didn't do fucking anything. Again, the progress on Ashes of Creation wasn't glacially paced. It was barely existed. Again, if you're being honest, the game is... I'm not making this up. If you combine everything, the game is maybe 5% complete at this point. None of the classes, none of the mechanics, none of the quests, none of the interactions, none of the world is actually finished at this point. The world is probably the biggest one, and even from that, there's only one zone that even comes remotely close above 50% completion. In 10 years, that being the only thing that they have actually finished is crazy.
And it was very much a game that had a long way to go. But as the years would go by, we would continue to get updates from the developers, and things seemed to be going well enough to the point where we eventually did see a December 11th, 2025 launch. The game would launch in early access at a cost of $50, but you don't see that price point here anymore because the game has since been delisted due to the fact that basically...
Based Steam heroes.
The development team behind this MMO, Intrepid Studios, has practically imploded and left the game in an untenable state from a development
By the
standpoint.
way, I never talked about this, but one of the reasons why I had no hopes for Ashes of Creation, honestly, as a game when it launched, well, when it was still active, was because of the summoner. You see this little fucking yellow blob shit? Yeah, that's a summon. When you make a summon just a glowing yellow fucking ginormous thing, you have no clue what you're doing, okay? There's a reason every single game that has survived along in the MMO space doesn't have flashy summons that require you to turn off the brightness on your computer, okay? And this game, again, this game got like fundamentally almost everything wrong. Fundamentally, literally, I'm not even joking, almost everything wrong. Like, the way that weapons feel, that attacks feel, that summons feel, all of these things they got so pitifully wrong. It's insane.
Point, which is why you'll find that recent reviews are overwhelmingly negative because, it's been an almost 9-year-long journey only for the MMO to shut down 2 months after launch, leaving people feeling like they were scammed. It was throughout January 31st to February 1st, 2026 when we first started hearing rumblings about Intrepid Studios' implosion, with Margaret Crone here, who was the director of marketing communications at Intrepid Studios, and in many ways being the face of this project, coming out and saying, well, this chapter has come to a close. My time at Intrepid Studios has officially ended. Keeping details rather vague, but straight up saying that as for how this all ended, I don't really have the words. It wasn't what I expected. With indications that a lot of people were laid off during this whole process, and going to Intrepid Studios LinkedIn, you can see that a lot of people who once worked at the studio now have hashtag open to work on their profile photo, suggesting that there were significant layoffs. And Stephen Sheriff eventually responded with this statement where he too was vague and talked about like some kind of hostile takeover on the part of the board of directors. And so in protest, he resigned, and following his resignation, allegedly, much of the senior leadership team
I find it so funny that he, in protest to himself, resigned. I mean, makes sense.
resigned, and he blames that board of directors for issuing the Warren Act notices that signal not only a mass layoff, but full on the shutdown of the studio from the looks of things. In terms of why he was keeping details vague, he just said that because of ongoing legal and governance matters, he cannot responsibly.
Ah, yes, the Asmongold defense. There's stuff happening, so I can't speak about it. It's a lie. It's always a lie. You can speak about it.
Speak in further details at this time, so there's still a lot of mystery surrounding this whole situation. But Stephen Sheriff, being the leader of this project, a lot of this is his responsibility, and so a lot of blame is being shifted to him, especially with questions surrounding like what.
I love how he speaks about this. So the blame that Ashes of Creation has imploded is being shifted on Stephen Sheriff? What do you mean? What do you mean? Yo, did you make this video not knowing anything? Because honestly, it kind of sounds like it. Stephen Sheriff, all the blame is being shifted at him. Like, what do you mean? He's the owner and CEO, and you're like, oh, the blame is being shifted on poor innocent Stephen. What are you, Zyback TV or something like that? Holy, why are you glazing Stephen now?
Board of directors, when you once upon a time said that we aren't governed by greedy corporate overlords, I'm funding the project, so no investors or a board to answer to, no publishers to appease. And all of a sudden, we're learning that there was a board of directors and that they caused all of this and that they did some kind of hostile takeover. Things just don't add up compared to what Stephen Sheriff said previously. And with his past, with like multi-level marketing, people are like, is this a scam? Like, was this intentional on the part of Steven? Just a lot of suspicion being thrown around, but we don't really know the full story quite yet. Except that Ashes of Creation took a lot of money from a lot of people, led them on for 9 years, only for this MMO to launch and crash and burn 2 months after its release, and for it to also launch in a very feature incomplete, just very unfinished, and for 9 years of development, a lot of people felt like this MMO should have been at a further state. And then there's accusations surrounding its early access launch, with a lot of people suspecting that it was done so that they can
But by the way, there's still so much that doesn't make a single lick of fucking sense when it comes to Ashes of Creation. For example, still the payouts don't make sense because People, yeah, last time we talked about the payouts, people were mentioning that it's California, so it technically does actually make sense. So the math that I did was correct, but it's correct in California, so it's really expensive. I'm pretty sure most people didn't work at the actual workplace for Ashes of Creation, so their salaries could be smaller. Second of all, people were mentioning server costs. Bro, server costs are bullshit. You know how much Wikipedia pays in a fucking year in server costs while raking in literally hundreds of millions in donations? Less than 30K. The whole of Wikipedia costs less than 30K in server costs. Wait, was it 30K or less than 300K in server costs? But that's in a year. Imagine Wikipedia, the most giant website we have, or visit the Wayback Machine that's bigger. I don't know. But anyway, Wikipedia is definitely number one or number two. And a lot of people use Wikipedia daily. And that shit is either less than 30K or less than 300K in server costs in a year. Ashes of Creation doesn't even come close to that. Now, granted, they had like something like a 1 million server costs in debt since December, but you need to understand that debt could actually be accumulated through years, through I don't know, through a lot of things. There are ways to accumulate that unpaid debt. Okay, it's not just like that. Its server costs were actually just really 1 million per month.
Technically fulfill the promise of if the game doesn't launch, then we'll return the money. And since the game technically did launch,
oh wait, I didn't even finish the rant that I was going on. Okay, the biggest thing that doesn't make sense about this is the fact that they were selling beta keys for like, I don't know, how much was it the last time, 100, 200 or something like that dollars, and they stopped selling them while people still wanted to buy them. Like, why would you do that? If you need money, you wouldn't do it. If you're a scam, you wouldn't do it. So how the hell does that make sense? That you have people who want to buy your shitty alpha keys, and then you don't. Unless obviously your idea is let's create FOMO, because they have already done it before with the keys and whatnot. Maybe they thought that they can actually, make it a little bit more expensive the next time around, but next time around never came. There's so many questions because Ashes of Creation doesn't make sense as a game, and Ashes of Creation doesn't even make sense as a scam. It's just like this is on all levels the most mismanaged, stupid thing ever.
some state, in this case early access state, they don't have to fulfill that promise because they technically launched the game, even if in a bare bones and incomplete state that culminated in it kind of collapsing 2 months after launch. People are also wondering how they're going to fulfill all of these Kickstarter obligations, like hosting people who paid over $10,000 with invitations to, like launch parties and dinners and stuff like that. That's just no longer going to happen. So just a completely disastrous, catastrophic, calamitous end to an MMO that had a lot of potential based on its concepts, but not based on its execution. And now we have a new update from none other than Margaret Crone herself, who spoke at greater length about her experience with what happened on this front. And yeah, this paints some additional light into some of the mystery surrounding what the hell just happened, how this implosion could happen so suddenly, seemingly without warning. Here is how Margaret Crone recounts her side of the story. Quote, "I waited until today to share this because I wanted to be sure I was communicating from a place of clarity. Intrepid Studios has shut down in a way that I did not expect. What I can share is what I experienced. On January 28th, towards the end of the workday, I was informed that we would be laying off 100 developers. I was devastated. These are hardworking people who are going to lose their jobs. Still, I believed it was something we could face together and find a path forward." So yeah, the initial plan was a round of mass layoffs that would result in roughly 100 employees getting laid off. A significant portion of the
I wonder what Margaret says is even true. Now, if you know who Margaret Crone is, you know that she is a breeding mare. But despite my fantasies, I don't actually believe her. Okay, she was way in too deep. She was the full, pretty much fledged face of Ashes of Creations onto the public. She was pretty high up there. She should have known this is happening months ago. She should have had an inkling. She should have understood it onto some degree, and I think she did. I think she's just smart enough to hide this and make herself not to be one of the bad people, and that's what's kind of happening. I think that's the story that is unveiling here.
Like around 250 employees that were working at Intrepid Studios, but it would still keep the studio alive to continue working on this project. But those plans quickly shifted. On January 29th, I shared this information of the mass layoffs that were incoming confidentially with my game services team. I told them that changes were coming, that I did not yet know who would be affected, and that I wished I had more certainty to offer. I could not live with myself if I did not give them advance notice. These are people who deserve to be treated like human beings. By the end of the day, I received confirmation of which people on my team would be impacted. Then on January 30th, I spoke individually with each of my team members to let them know whether they were affected so they could begin planning and preparing. Those who were staying began working on ways to move forward. Even those who knew they would be leaving offer their support.
Gotta hate this, by the way. The people who were staying were working on ways to move forward. Forward after what? Did these people actually buy into the bullshit of we're all a family here. We work as a family. Bro, if any company ever tells you we're a family here, yeah, you better run for the hills.
Showing the grace, professionalism, and strength that defined our game services team. Then, a day later, on January 31st, we were all informed via a confusing email that we would be laid off along with a warn notice. It is still shocking. The entire studio gathered to try to understand what had happened and what it meant for our future. In the end, none of us are receiving our final paychecks, the 60 days notice and pay outlined under the WARN Act, PTO payouts or pay time off payouts, or other compensation owed. So beyond the chaotic nature of how all of this played out, where over the course of a few days, we went to mass layoffs that would still keep the studio and the team alive, to suddenly everyone getting laid off out of the blue with no explanation whatsoever, to the fact that the folks who worked at this development studio would not receive their final payment checks alongside other elements that they're owed. It paves the road to one of the most sudden, confusing, mysterious, and egregious ways in which a studio has shut down and laid off employees. The statement continues, what matters most to me now are the people, both the players and the developers. To the players, the entire development team was working extremely hard, pulling long hours and wishes with all our hearts that we could give you Ashes of Creation.
Okay. Mommy Margaret had said things. Let's look at what's happening after that.
Laying off all of the employees and imploding as a studio, and not just going through a round of mass layoffs that will retain some team members to keep working on the game, is this WARN Act letter right here that was filed by Intrepid Studios in the state of California, in which they cite that on January 31st, 2026, Intrepid Studios issued a layoff notice to all of its employees. The company has no alternative other than to understand community, but given what has transpired and the lack of
Oh shit, he actually posted something. That's insane. Okay.
even had the following to say in response to somebody saying, we need a formal statement before the reputation is ruined even further. He said, it is certainly heartbreaking to see the impact to the people I care about, both my developers and community, but given what has transpired in the last...
Bro, he threatened to sue people who said mean things about his game, okay? He threatened to sue Narc because Narc said this looks like a scam. Man, he must be really heartbroken,
lack of facts available to the public, the reputational impact is something that cannot be avoided until the record is set straight with the proper public filings.
Yeah. We have already heard this song and dance before, and all of the Ashes of Creation shills that are still out there, by the way. There's legitimately still channels that are saying, well, I'm gonna glaze the devil, and Reddit may give me a little bit of flack here for that. Yeah, no shit. You're literally standing up for a guy that rug pulled everyone, okay? Dude, listen. This is not an accident. Steven Sharif did not start protecting his assets a month ago before the company went under. Because yes, that's what he started doing. He started shifting asset management to other people than himself and whatnot, aka protecting his assets in case the company goes under. And well, surprise, surprise, that wasn't random. Who would have expected? Ah, man. And I love this. Oh, we need to wait for the thing to say. This is just a tactic so they don't, no one talks about it, okay? It's a tactic so low IQ individuals, I mean, Asmongold viewers in particular, typically, just give up on asking questions because the lawyers are involved and you can't say anything because the law. Shut up, you can. It's just a tactic that people always use to not say anything because, oh, they can't. No, they can. It's a lie. It's literally a lie. In any case, that was a younger Yair. As we all know, Steven Shreve doesn't really give it. Maybe there's more?
There's an individual who played 10 hours of this game.
No. Anyway, that was our boy Young. Yeah, 10 out of 10. Ash Civilization continues to burn. Bye.